If I were going to talk about this, I would say simplify, simplify, simplify. You know, it may feel good to have a lot of accounts in a lot of different places, but what they end up acting like are orphans or the stepchildren that you never really take care of. Hopefully that's nothing in your world that makes any sense, but we all know that the stories are out there, and that's exactly what we see happen with accounts when people leave one company and they leave a 401k plan behind, or they've got a smaller IRA over here. They just get orphaned and the attention is not paid. What we want to do is to make sure that you're paying the most attention you possibly can. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Daren and I are going to talk about how to consolidate accounts on Consider This Program. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Daren Hardesty.
We're happy to have you along. All right, Daren, we are talking about simplification. What does that, in what way are we going to use that in this segment?
We're talking about simplifying the number of accounts that you have. Now, as a former math teacher, I loved to simplify everything, just kind of getting it to its most simplest form. It was a satisfying thing as a math teacher, but it works the same way, I think, with your accounts. We want to make sure that all of your accounts, no matter over your lifetime, we want to get those into as few accounts as possible for the simplification of your life, and there's lots of reasons to do that.
How many accounts can I have and be simple?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. In general, if you're a single person, 3 accounts is generally, as far as investments, is generally all you should have. IRA account for your tax-deferred dollars, a Roth IRA for any money that you've contributed to the Roth that's already been taxed, and then also a brokerage account or a TOD, transfer on death account, that would be considered after tax, but it's still a taxable for capital gains. Those 3 accounts. If you're married, 5 accounts, an IRA for each, a Roth IRA for each, and then a joint account between the 2.
And if you have a job,
yes,
you have a 401k or a 403b, depending on where you are.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep. So
that many times, people will hear us talk on the show about the idea of being to do an in-service non-hardship distribution or something like that. Well, sometimes you can't. I'm 54. I can't get the money out of my own 401k to put in an IRA, or I would have already done it.
Right.
We have to make a major amendment to the plan in order for that to be able to occur, and it's not feasible. It doesn't work out. So why, you've been around for a year and a half now. Why do you think I call them orphan accounts?
In general, it's stuff that you just kind of forgot about. It's accounts that probably are typically small. The larger accounts seem to draw a little bit more attention. If you leave a workplace and you've accumulated $500,000 in a 401k, you're probably going to think about that one a little bit more than one that's got $10,000. It's one of those things where, as an orphan, you just think, well, I'll get to it later, or I'll worry about that later, and it just isn't a priority for you. So it happens a lot, and for lots of reasons, and it's one of the things we do on a regular basis. When we bring people in, we want to make sure that we know where all the assets are at so we can be a part of that simplification process for them.
So one of the issues that happens especially if you've bought a product. So let's think about you've bought mutual funds or you bought an annuity, right? Mm-hmm. And Jack Ashby used to tell me, he was a CPA in Anderson. He said, "You're the only one I know." I go, "What do you mean I'm the only one?" "You're the only one that actually made it, right? That didn't work at, one of the independent or one of the, the Merrill Lynch's or the Morgan Stanley's or places like that." The bottom line is the financial services industry does have a lot of turnover. It has a lot of people who start and don't make it, right? Yep. So what's very, very typical is for somebody to get into the industry and they're a niece, nephew, neighbor, grandson, right? Mm-hmm. And they sell you something, right? And then they're gone, right? They decide this isn't going to work out. They're going back to do another industry or they're going to do something else, but not in the financial services industry. And suddenly you are now known as what's called a house account, right? And so the statement will come and maybe it'll have somebody else's name on it. Maybe it will actually just say house account. Mm-hmm. But either way, you're orphaned and nobody is taking from the professional side. You may be looking at it still, but nobody from the professional side is looking at it and saying, okay, here's how this coordinates with the rest of your accounts. Right. So when we talk about simplify, 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 what we're really trying to do is to make sure that there's maximum attention paid that is done with the least amount of fees, the least amount of expenses, that's done to help you get your financial vision in place, right? So that the money's actually working for you as opposed to just kind of sitting around.
Right.
Yeah.
I think in what we do, what we take very serious that a lot of people may not. I think a lot of our families are the same mindset. We care about every expense, every bit of taxation. We care about every penny. Like you've said many times, you still pick up change when you see it on the street. It matters. It matters. So I think when we can be a part of that process and help people start to kind of clean up their accounts, it's stuff that they've probably been thinking about for a while. They just have kept putting it off, and it's satisfying. Just like simplifying a math problem, it's satisfying to get it all into one place.
Yep. And we do the work,
Yep.
by the way. That's, whether it's Alicia or Jana or Chris, whomever it happens to be at the time as our paraplanners, there are 5 or 6 of them that are on the team. We actually do the work for you to get it done. This isn't something that you have to go through a heart thumping process to be able to get it done.
Right.
But let's say I've left a company and I've got an old 401k. What is the process? What would you and Alicia do to help me get that 401k moved, and where would it go?
So if you wanted to work with us, we would call the 401k plan. You can't do an account transfer like you can for another, like an IRA or an account that you have in another institution. Inside of the 401k, you always have to call the plan. Generally, we'll call with you, and they will typically, anymore, the larger companies will let us actually process everything over the phone. They'll cut a check for the amount at the end of trade that day. They'll cut a check, and it'll either be sent directly to the owner of the account, or they can have it mailed directly to our institution to invest into an IRA. We always check, is there any after-tax dollars? If it's an older 401k account, sometimes there is after-tax money in there. We always want to double-check that so we can get those dollars into a Roth. But generally, the money will mostly all be tax-deferred. We get the check into the IRA, and it's reinvested.
And away we go. So I'm going to say that again, though, because he brought up a very, very important point that a lot of people miss. And it's typically money that was put in prior to 1986. Not always, but prior to 1986, typically. The IRS in 2016 made it very, very explicitly stated that money can be rolled directly to a Roth IRA when you go to separate from service, or when you go to do an in-service non-hardship distribution, whichever it may be. So you've got money that is tax deferred. That's the money that your employer put in. And then you've had your choice of money, if assuming you have a Roth option, you've had your choice of putting money in either in the Roth option or the or tax deferred. You can add more to it. And then there may have been more money that you actually put in that was before tax, right? So all of those have to be accounted for when those rollovers occur. The people that are in your HR department that monitor it have to help you with this and have to get it right. We're the ones doing all of the hard work on the other end, though, making sure that the accounts get transferred correctly, that there's no taxation, that it's set up correctly, and that you're there. And one thing I would tell you is to always check. We didn't hit this yet, but always check your beneficiary designations. When we do a family update, if we moved your money from a 401k, for instance, into an IRA, one of the things that we're going to do every single year is to check the beneficiary designation to make sure that it's still who you want the money to go to, right? There are marriages, divorces, deaths, right? Sadly, just the way life goes. But we want to make sure that the beneficiary is still on the form correctly, and that that's who you really want the money to go to.
Yeah, and one thing that our families really appreciate, I believe, is when we call with them. These are things that we do on a daily basis, and so we know the exact questions to ask. We know how to get to the right person as fast as possible. We also know that every plan is different. We never assume that just because this plan operates this way, another plan may be different. So there's things that when we call, we know exactly what to get to the bottom to, and it's a pretty quick process, 15 minutes unless they keep you on hold for a while.
Did it surprise you when you joined the Financial Enhancement Group? Did it surprise you that all 401k plans weren't the same?
I guess, I don't know if it surprised me, but I never really considered any different. I had a 403B
as a teacher, yeah.
And I know that 403Bs also, they qualify for generally the same rules as a 401k. They mirror them, but they're not exactly the same. So it wasn't really surprising, but it is just one of those things it doesn't take long. You realize that every plan, you got to ask the right questions. Some plans allow certain things, some don't, but all you have to do is call and ask, and somebody will have the answer for you.
I was, I think driving. I can't remember actually where it was. It could have been another podcast when I was, but listening to another financial show, and sure enough, they again said in a 401k plan you can take loans, you can borrow money, and you guys need to understand that all 401ks are not the same. What Daren is saying is totally accurate, and each plan is constructed differently. Now, what happens is there's some general plans that are out there that a lot of people will use. The reason I can't get my money out until 59 and a half is because the general plan essentially does not allow for in-service non-hardship distributions until people are 59 and a half. It can be, you can have them sooner. There are plans that are out there that let people take money out when they're 50.
I've seen some too that only allow the employee contribution to come out.
Yeah. So they're all crafted differently,
Yep.
right? And what we want to do in our process is use that fiduciary focus that we talked about, right? We're going to look at risk and volatility, fees and expenses, taxes both today and tomorrow, and real return. We're going to take your accounts that you have, whether they're orphan accounts or old 401ks or existing 401ks. We're going to do everything we can to simplify. That means get it into the fewest amount of accounts that we possibly can to make sure that every dollar has its marching order.
Right.
Right. We want to make sure that they're working in unison. So just stop and think about this for a second. IRAs, in the old days, I would have accounts that had dividends and interest all be inside of your IRA, and accounts that would have more long-term capital gains, I would have outside of your IRA, right? Well, now with the tax brackets being where they are, if you're in the 12% bracket or under, there is no long-term capital gain tax, right? There is no taxation on qualified dividends. So, it's a little bit different, but you've got to have something that a strategy in place, or somebody to be kind of the shopkeeper, right? To look at this stuff and go, okay, here's how this needs to be designed. Here's how we make it all work together to get the most efficiency, if you will. So, hey, go to our website, yourlifeafterwork.com. You can get more like this. While you're there, get signed up for the Market Carver. It's a video we do every week to talk to people and remind people where we are in the economy, where we are in the market in terms of what's going on. But while you're at the website, yourlifeafterwork.com, get signed up for your Next Steps meeting, right? It's complimentary. We'll spend 90 minutes with you. And folks, if you want to do this on your own, that is your business. But if you're looking for a fiduciary, that is our business. 800-928-4001.